We're live. What is up? What is up? What is up? How we doing, people? How we doing? Back on the show. Good to see all of you in here. I know. You guys were waiting forever. My apologies, okay? Preparing for the show. Lots of work behind the scenes. Nah, I was just procrastinating. But good to see all of you in here. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. Hope you had an amazing 4th of July. I certainly did. Did you see the stream with Sneako? We went IRL, walking around New York City, having a good time. That was lots of fun. We debated about literally everything under the sun, so that was fun. I think he's live right now. But it was a really good stream. So if you didn't get to see that, go back to his kick stream. However, I'm going to farm most of the highlight moments, all of the good moments of debate and, you know, the funny moments and stuff. We'll clip that up and get that here on YouTube for you guys if you don't want to go over to Kick and watch his. So, because it's an 11-hour stream, so you're going to have to sift through all of it to really find the good moments. But there's a lot of fun. We went over a lot. Obviously, he's under a lot of heat right now, so there's that. But I'm sure that'll blow over. Lots of news, lots of things that have happened since really the 2nd or 3rd of July from the last time I was live. If I'm not mistaken, we were live covering Ukraine and Russia, my brother and I. But then we had another debate with Sneako over left and right politics. So me and Sneako have just been debating and fighting, but it's all in good faith. It's a good time, and it's entertaining content. So a lot of that will get farmed and posted on the channel as time goes on. However, I'm going to go live alone tonight, as I am now. Myron's getting some rest. He's been live all day. If you missed it, he went over the preliminary hearing with Charlie Kirk's assassination and Tyler Robinson and all that good stuff. So if you want the details as to what happened there, go check out his streams from today. Some of it may be on YouTube. However, if you want the full thing, just follow him on a Kick. It's preferable that you watch him there anyways, and you can get a really comprehensive breakdown as to what's going on, what's likely to happen, as my brother was a former federal agent with Homeland Security and Investigation. So he's going to have a much more comprehensive breakdown and analysis of it than not only myself, but really anybody else on the internet. So a really nice treat. And that's something people don't appreciate about Myron is not only is he really good in geopolitics and domestic politics and all this stuff, advice, you know, obviously I'm going to glaze my own brother, right? But the biggest thing is he worked for the government. He was a federal agent. So anytime there's a case, there's an indictment, there's something related to law, crime, court cases, whatever, he's like full stop. There's no one better than him. So he's really good with that stuff. I think you guys will enjoy it. If you wanted to see all the lore as to what's happening with that case, go check out his coverage because it was really good, and it's going to continue as we go into the next few weeks. I'm sure more key details will come out. A lot of crazy things happened today with it, but really I'll leave that for his coverage. So it's good to see all of you. And yeah, this is like the 2nd week now of me streaming in the new apartment. It would have been the 3rd, but my Wi-Fi was down for the 1st week, so that was really annoying. But you know, regardless, it was a really good weekend. So if you didn't get to check that out, go ahead. A lot of clips went viral on X. You know, the clip of me talking about what Sneako asked me, he goes, do you want to live in a compound with your boys? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, here, let me just get these screens situated. So he's like, do you really want to live in a compound with your friends? Like, as opposed to living with your wife? And I'm like, okay, bro. They're going to clip this up and call me gay, but bro, like, yes. And honestly, if you're against that, like, bro, you fell for the feminism card. Because it's just like, why would you not want to? Bro, I'm far more productive with my friends. We can share laughs. I don't have to worry about them nagging me for my attention. You know when your boy doesn't text you for like 3 or 4 days, or you guys don't talk for several days, or, you know, there's a disconnect in communication for a period of time. And then you just rekindle and you talk again like nothing ever happened. Because maybe niggas just weren't talking, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You don't get that with your wife. If it's not constant validation, if it's not constant compliments, showering her with love, physical touch, all the time, at all times, after work, when you're tired, well then now she has grievances. Now she's disheveled. Now she's asking you questions. Now she's insecure. But you live with your niggas, there's none of that. I can sit down in my apartment with my nigga, and he could be on the couch, I can be on the stool in the kitchen, and we could just scroll reels for like an hour and not talk to each other. And then I'll just be like, yo, you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Okay, let's go. And it's just, you know, like, it's easy. They're going to call me gay, whatever. Look, I'm going to have a wife. Okay, I'm going to get married. But I said this on X. I tweeted the video. I quoted over it. I said, stop acting like traditionalism is always fun. There is a sacrifice in that, you know, to live with your wife and just your kids. That's awesome. And like, I do look forward to that, really. And like a house with a backyard, that's awesome for like the first couple years. But I mean, like, bro, like 10 years into living with your wife. All right, bro. That's a bit tiring. So anyways, you know, we had that conversation. It was pretty funny. Maybe we can react to some clips, but we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot to get into. The funeral for Ayatollah Khamenei, allegedly 12 million people showed up to the funeral for the dead supreme leader. So what happened with U.S. media saying that nobody in the country liked the IRGC or the supreme leader? What happened to that? Did you guys see this? I'll show you this really quickly, and then I'll give you a few more announcements before we get into all these other stories that I wanted to cover. Look at this. Brother. Fox News is over there reporting, everybody in the country is so happy the U.S. is bombing Iran. Everybody hates the supreme leader. I'm sorry, what's this? Nigga. Are you kidding me? And there's like, look at this is a helicopter view. And they're still going. Not an inch of space anywhere in the streets. Sheer, just all people. Humans. You know, we can fast forward. This is just, well, look at this. Unbelievable. Are you kidding me? And they said there was no rally around the flag effect. Yeah, and I told this to my brother, or I forget who I told, really. I've been having lapses in memory. But I said this on stream at some point. Maybe you remember, maybe you don't. You know, maybe a lot of people in the country did not like the IRGC. And to that, I completely understand. I mean, they were, and still are to some degree, a brutal regime. They've killed so many Muslims inside of Iraq and Syria. Like, you know, people call me an IRGC spokesperson. Yeah, couldn't be further from that. Couldn't be farther from that. However, when you face an existential threat, even with an unfavorable, brutal regime, if it's the United States and Israel interlocking hands and attacking you and trying to destroy your existence and killing civilians and trying to overthrow the government, you might just actually straddle the line and like support the IRGC. And I mean, it's over and over. It's just endless U.S. and Israeli aggression. Could you imagine anybody that was on the fence about supporting the IRGC after February 28th, when the United States started that war, all the way up until now, we still don't have a legitimate peace deal? Yeah, it's likely that people are going to sway in the direction of the government that happens to be, or the regime rather, that happens to be defending the land. And as a result, exploiting money out of the United States in regards to reparations and oil sanctions and $300 billion from the Gulf and controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And, you know, if the IRGC was unfavorable before the war, the United States and Israel just made them more likable to the Iranian base. That's just facts. And all of these people who are suffering from the Iranian diaspora, and look, like I said, I don't want to be completely insensitive to the fact that the IRGC is responsible for some brutal war crimes. I'm well aware. Okay, you're not red pilling me on that. But I mean, can you really argue with this? So, unbelievable. And, you know, the reason why this is so remarkable is because, like I said, and we always talked about Iran, and we've spoken about Iran for 100+ days, Donald Trump started this war, and he said the Iranian people want to be liberated. He said he's going to bomb Tehran, and after he bombs Tehran, there's going to be this effect in the country where people are just going to organically overthrow the government and take back what's theirs, and there's going to be the Shah regime again, and it's going to be bliss. And that's not what happened, actually. Now there's 12 million plus people flooding the streets, celebrating or really commemorating the death of their supreme leader that you killed on day one of the war. And it just makes you think the United States put an even larger battery in the back of Iran than the one that had existed prior, before the United States actually ever directly struck Tehran or anywhere else in regards to maybe the 12-day war, Isfahan, Fordo, Natanz. But, you know, that's the situation in Iran. It just continues to get worse. And now as Iran, and look, we'll go over a few more things. I'm not going to get into the news just yet, but I'll tell you what we'll talk about. Now, Russia is allegedly facing a fuel crisis, and obviously Western media is going to propagate that up. They're going to make that far worse than it may actually be in Russia. But on TikTok in Russia and everything else, people are waiting in mile-long lines for fuel. And Russia is facing this fuel energy crisis as a result of Ukrainian strikes targeting critical Russian energy infrastructure. This has been the case for really the larger part of this last few months, or the last month, the last few weeks at the end of June. Ukraine and Russia have been striking each other back and forth, and maybe some of you have seen that in the news. However, it's kind of been shoveled back and just forgotten about in the fog of all this Iran nonsense, as well as everything else that's happening here at home. But the situation is heating up considerably in Ukraine and Russia. And Russia responded after Ukraine was aggressive in hitting in energy infrastructure in Moscow with some of its worst offensive since we've seen, or the worst that we've seen since 2022. Russia had hit Ukraine, really the capital, Kyiv, with over 400 drone strikes and 100 missile strikes. And allegedly, that's the worst offensive that they've ever dealt to the Ukrainians since the war had started back in February of 2022, which has been ongoing for 4 years now, and it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. And so they're still going tit for tat, but it seems like Ukraine is getting really aggressive. In regards to Russian expansion, it seems to have halted a little bit. It's not as far stretched or as aggressive as it was prior. And that's just because of the fact that it seems like now we're seeing a situation where an unstoppable force is meeting an immovable object. Obviously, Russian military is far greater than that of Ukraine's. They have more men, they have more manpower, they have more military capability, they have more drones, they have more missiles. But at the same time, Ukraine has gotten tons of Western backing. They're allied with the EU, they're allied with NATO, they're allied with the United States. And even though Trump has not been so hands-on recently, and actually the favorability for Trump in Ukraine is at an all-time low, they still have what's required to kind of defend themselves for the greater part of the next few months until they run out of all of these munitions that they're hitting Russia with very hard. So that situation has been in a little bit of limbo. Everybody in the U.S. media is saying Russia's losing badly and everything like that. I think it's a moment where Ukraine is rallying back, but I think it will be short-lived because at any time, Russia still is a nuclear threat. Russia still possesses the ability to escalate the conflict further than we've ever seen. And this is the real concern, and this has always been the concern with Ukraine and Russia and the United States being involved, is we're just going up this ladder. And as you go up the ladder of escalation in these conflicts, eventually you're going to have to exercise or get to the nuclear option. And that's been the fear in 2022 and 2023 when the conflict was ongoing and it was at its worst. Everybody was very concerned that this would turn into a nuclear disaster. And now we've got our hand tied in Iran. Our hands are tied with Jared Kushner and Stephen Witkoff and working out these negotiations in Qatar in which the Iranian delegation refuses to talk directly to us, and they're talking to Qatar instead as a mediator. So there's a loss of communication there, despite the fact that in Geneva a few weeks ago, we had set up a direct phone line with Iran and so that this wouldn't happen anymore. But Iran still refuses to exercise that option, allegedly, at least from what the news is telling us. And it seems like they're still using this mediating process. And it's because they're dragging their feet, because there is no real urgency from the Iranian delegation or Iran as a whole to end this war. I'm sure they would like it over at some point in the near future or distant future, but the desperation is not equal on their end in regards to Donald Trump. He's very concerned of ending this war, and that's because he may have to mobilize in Ukraine as well. And obviously, he was just at a NATO meeting, and right before that NATO meeting was when Russia actually hit Kyiv with those crazy strikes that we hadn't seen the likes of since 2022. So, you know, the situation in Ukraine and Russia is heating up a lot more than we have seen in the last few months. And of course, they've been going back and forth, but these are some of the more violent aggressions or violent escalations that we weren't expecting to get. And of course, we're all occupied in Iran. So what Trump is going to do there, I don't know, but he's in one of the worst positions that I think any president has been in the last 20 or 30 years since Clinton. So we'll see what he does with that. But we'll watch a video. We'll get into all of that. We can go over the annexation of Crimea in 2014. I'll give you guys the whole lore as to what's going on with Russia, why they ever attacked Ukraine, NATO expansion. Maybe we can even talk about the Warsaw Pact, the CSTO, which Belarus is a part of. We can talk about the Crimean Peninsula, how it's rich with oil and gas, which is partially why Russia ever annexed that peninsula in the first place. The overthrown leader, Viktor Yanukovych, who was aligned with Russia, and the Euromaidan protests that were fueled by the West. We'll get into all of that, and I'll give you the chronological timeline as to how we got to where we are now with Russia and Ukraine. And now the rhetoric it's grown into Putin is in a corner. Putin is facing backlash from his people, and the base in Russia wants the economy to flourish, but it can't because of this war, and the gas infrastructure is getting hit. So we'll see. We'll go into all of that. You got to be careful with U.S. sources because they're very anti-Russia, pro-Ukraine. We just want to get the clear picture without bias, and it can be difficult sometimes, but I aim to do that for you guys. But we'll do all of that. I have a few chats here that I'll read, but we'll do that later. Because, like, is Russia-Ukraine that interesting? No. It's been happening for, like, 10 years. So, literally, I'm not even kidding. Like, 12 years it's been ongoing. So today, let me read the chats. So, Aaron says, what's going on, my guy? Welcome back. I saw a clip from the Sneako stream you did, bro. These lights are doing you justice for real. You're dark, bro. Midnight dark. It's all love, bro. Okay. Bro calls me dark 3 times and says it's all love. Nah, I'm kidding. Yeah, the lighting is, I told you guys, it's a bit of a fraud max. But, like, okay, the ISO on Sneako's camera was kind of low, bro. All right. Like, I'm looking, I'm not coping. Gang, I'm watching the clips back, and I'm like, all right, I'm black, but I'm not that dark. Like, the ISO was mad low. Like, that's bad cope. But there's certain shots where, like, I'm not that dark. Okay, gang, we were in the car. Here, look at this. Look at this video.
War room.
Like, am I frauding that bad?
And Johnny Walker.
No. I think I would love to. Like, it's not that crazy, you know. But no, I'm dark. I'm dark as hell. I am dark. So I'm just playing around. But yeah, at times I was like looking at the screen, like in the chat. And then I would look at the camera and I'm like, yo, this angle is so bad. But it's all good. Chesco Scale says, European women or American, and why European? European all day. American women are conceited, pretentious, rude, stuck up, entitled. That's just true. That's just the facts. If you've been to Europe and you've been to the United States and you've spoken to women from both continents and several different countries in Europe, you would know right away that, honestly, just in the West, women are terrible. But in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, the Baltic regions, the women are just far more receptive to men being brave enough to hit on them. They don't like shoot you down, and they're not like stuck up. Like, bro, I tried rizzing girls on the IRL stream, and I was doing it for the bit. Like, it was LARP, you know? There was like a group of girls. I walked up to them, and she was embarrassing. I think Goat Coast clipped it up. You can go find that shit. I'm not watching it. But, you know, you go up to a group of American girls, or you go up to American girls in general, and not all of them are rude. I don't want to be super unfair or uncharitable, but they just, it seems like they're used to the attention. I don't know what the difference is. It seems like they're used to the attention. It seems like there's so much more privilege. It seems as if, though, they don't really crave a connection with a man. Rather, they've gotten this attention, and that's their main currency. And so they don't entertain you. In Europe, and the proof of this, I spoke about this before. Look at these videos on Instagram of these guys with the meta glasses that record, and they're like rizzing girls. Now that's the new content creation. That's the new style. Back in like 2014, it was prank videos on YouTube, like the prank channels like Vitaly and stuff. Now it's guys with meta glasses going up to girls, calling them pretty. And you can see the contrast. Like, when guys do this in the United States, sometimes it works, and so it's fine. But like when the girls reject you in the US, it's like, get the fuck away from me. You're scary. You're disgusting. You're ugly. I hate you. Like, go die in a hole. Whereas in Europe, like, the women, even if they're not interested, they're so much more respectful. It's a respect thing. Why that is? Maybe because they're raised better. Maybe because Europe has got a little bit of traditionalism. They've got it by a thin thread. I'm not saying they're super traditional. I know Europe is degenerate and hedonistic as well. They're not all Christ-pilled or whatever. But there's a difference there. You know, there is a difference in that. So, you know, you go up to girls in Europe or anywhere else, obviously South America, they're clocking it because they're just on it for the money. But in Europe, the women are far more respectful. You go up to girls in the United States. You know, you riz a girl in the U.S. I mean, go to New York City. Don't take it from me. You try it yourself. Go to a girl in New York City. Try to talk to her. Just try to be normal. Go up to her. Hey, really love your shoes. Where are those from? Or, hey, you're really pretty. Do you mind if we exchange contact information? What's your Instagram? super casual pickup line. You could do like the think outside the box and some esoteric riz, or you can just go up to her and be straight up and say, hey, I think you're pretty. What's your Instagram? Or are you single? And she will literally make you feel like a rapist. She will make you feel like a murderer. She will feel, ew, ew, get away from me, you fucking creep. Not actually, but you know what I mean? Like, there's that vibe. There's a semblance of that feeling. Whereas in Europe, they're just so much more receptive. They're respectful. They appreciate your willingness to actually go up to them. They understand the courage it takes. You know, there's just a respect thing there. Girls here don't respect you. Girls here kick dirt in your mouth and say, get the fuck away from me, you're creepy. In Europe, even if they're not interested, they say, no, I'm not interested, no thank you. But like, there's respect, you know? So, and also European women are just going to be more infatuated with Americans because we're unfamiliar, right? If you go to Europe and you have an American accent and you don't necessarily look European or look like you're native to whatever country you're actually in, whatever country that is in Europe, maybe that'll spark the girl's interest, like, oh, where's he from, you know? So there's that as well. There's that as well, which maybe a guy in Europe can say the same thing about the U.S. He has more success with girls here. I don't know, but just telling you from the U.S. perspective, the girls here are brutal. They are a brutal. And if you run day game or night game, you know. You know that's true. United States got eliminated from the World Cup after losing to Belgium. Damn, that's tough. U.S. just lost to Belgium. But so here's the thing about that. I wanted to react to this. Everybody's mad because Trump did something really based. He overturned the red card that would have kept one of the best players in the United States from playing in this match against Belgium. Obviously, that didn't have any effect. They lost. But take a look at this. If you haven't seen this surfaced all day today, and everybody was crying about it.
So I saw the play, and I'm a person that loves sports and was a good athlete, and I understand sports really well, really well. And that wasn't a foul. That wasn't even an infraction. That was two guys running full speed that happened to crash into each other. You can't take your foot and properly place it on somebody else's foot when you're going, no, these were two great athletes that got tangled up, and this referee, who is a little bit suspect, if you check his past, I don't want to say that because I don't like to create controversy, but very suspect. If you'd like, I'll provide you with the past. He made a call that nobody could believe. You know, even people on the other side, they say, oh, we got lucky. Wow, that's... And it's very interesting. They say they don't show them in slow motion. And I never realized that. I never heard of that before. That they're not allowed to review in slow motion because it's so different. Because you'll take one little quarter of a second and you'll see that a hand is touching a neck or you'll see something. Whereas when you see it in fast motion, it will look like two guys collided, which is really what happened.
And that's what it was. I don't even know the player's name. I really don't follow soccer that closely. It was the black guy, but he like landed on the other guy's foot. Like his right foot went into the other guy's foot. It was obviously unintentional. Seemed like he was just playing the ball. Seemed like he was just playing. It happened by accident. And so they gave him a red card, which is like, isn't that equivalent to like a flagrant in the NBA? Like, you know, you can plausibly say there is malicious intent there, whatever. And so that takes him out of the next game.
They got sort of entangled. He didn't do anything wrong. And he's our best player or one of our best players. A very vital player. And he gave him a red card. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't think it meant much.
Him admitting he didn't know what it meant at the time and then still overturning it is so crazy. Like, can you imagine the president of the United States doesn't know any rules about soccer, but still overturns the rule that would have prevented the guy from not playing in the next game to the benefit of the U.S.? And, like, so here's the thing. I'll let the video play.
Much. Then I started hearing that means he can't play in the next game, at least in the next game. I said, boy, that's a big, you know, if it happened to another player, it would have been unfair. But when they take your best player, or just about, they have some great players, and they say you can't play, that's very unfair. That's, you know, it's one thing to penalize somebody for the game, but how do you penalize them for a game that hasn't been played yet? It's very unfair. You can't do that. So, yes, I asked for a review, by FIFA. I spoke to a man who's highly respected, and by the way, whose level of respect has gone up tenfold. And he was good before this started, but you know, he really pushed it in this country. I'm the one that got them to do it. It was not Biden. Biden was asleep.
Okay, that's pretty funny. Look,
I got him to do it. In fact, it was very sad because I got him to do it. And if the progression was normal, I would have been retired now. The Democrats are saying, man, we should have just let him have his way. We would have had him gone.
Listen, and we honestly, I've done more shitting on Trump than like literally anybody. I've been against Trump from the get-go, honestly. Since I started this channel, I've been against Trump. I didn't like his foreign policy. He started the war in Iran. Like, look, we all know Trump has made some terrible decisions. He's done nothing that he promised on in his campaign in 2020 and 2024. But, you know, it's things like this. People get mad at it, and that's where I'm conflicted. I don't know if I'm in unison with those people. You know, the World Cup is in the United States, and the president pulls a couple strings and keeps one of our best players in. Obviously, that didn't benefit us now. We lost. But, you know, it's kind of like, guys, why are we mad? Like, America, like, come on. Why are we mad at that? I thought it was based. Look, I know we lost, okay? We lost, I guess, to Belgium. I'm seeing it here. But, like, who's going to stop us? You know? I'm not saying I'm in support of, like, intervention and ravaging countries for our own benefit. We know I don't like that, but pull a couple strings, keep a player in the game. World Cups in the U.S. based. Like, who cares? We lost anyway, so everybody who's upset about it can now have their satisfaction. But people were, like, upset about this. People were so mad. And this went viral on X. Look at this. It's him putting the Trump card in the red card's face. That's just so good. That's so good. But, yeah, he overturned that. And look, like, he's the president of the United States. He's got executive power. Sometimes the guy's going to do what he wants. And everybody's going to say, Ryad, you support autocracy. Ryad, you support authoritarianism. And I'm not saying that. I mean, that's kind of how the Middle East works. I'm not saying that, but, you know, I'm not mad at the president pulling a couple strings so our team can have a better chance at winning, especially when I feel like the red card was a little bit unfair or a little bit unjust. At least you could have debated it. So, you know, everybody was so mad about that. Trump is so corrupt. Look, Trump is the most corrupt president we've ever seen. We know that. The crypto rug pull, the insider trading, his business with the Adelsons. We know Trump is the most corrupt president ever, okay? There's not even a debate on this. And in November, he's going to find out the hard way. It's going to be a harsh awakening for him when Democrats win over a majority of the House and maybe even the Senate at this point, and then he loses all legislative power and he gets indicted and possibly even impeached. Trump has it coming. So, fuck it. You know, he's got a couple more months of freedom. He's got a couple more months of power. Keep a nigga in the World Cup. Who cares? He's cooked anyways. So, I just don't know why people are so hell-bent and sticks up their ass about that. You know? Oh, he can't do that. He can't do that. Like, okay, complain about the rug pull. Fair. That's wrong. The insider trading. Fair. That's wrong. The golden Trump phone that people didn't receive, I guess. Totally wrong. Although, like, the MAGA retards that ordered that phone completely deserve not receiving it because, like, what are you doing? But, you know, he's going to lose anyways. You know, Trump is screwed. He's done in the midterms. Like, he's done. Lowest approval rating of, I think, any sitting U.S. president in recent history. The lowest he's ever seen. He's struggling with this quagmire in the Middle East. Ukraine is heating up. I don't know what he's going to do there. You know, overturn a red card? Okay, I'll leave that with him. That's fine. To me, that's a W. But everybody was mad about it, crying. Yeah, I know. People are going to say it's a bad look for the USA. The world hates the U.S. The world could hate us. Who gives a fuck? We're the greatest country in the world. I don't give a fuck. Suck on these USA nuts, nigga. Big bald eagle style, nigga. Oh, the USA is so corrupt. The USA overturned the red card. Yeah, nigga. B-2 bomber, F-35 jet. Big nukes, big United States power, nigga. Keep that nigga in the game. I don't give a fuck. Everybody's mad. It's a sport. Gang, it's a sport. Everybody, there's no integrity. It is a sport. It's a sport. Okay? It's a bunch of millionaires running around kicking a ball for you stupid goyim to enjoy. and you're over here, but he overturned the red card. That you can't do that. That FIFA rules. Nah, nigga, we make the rules, nigga. Big bad 50 states, we make the rules, okay? We don't like the call, we make the call. We don't like that call in the field with the referee, we make the call. Hey, overturn that shit or we're going to have problems. Because I don't imagine that phone call that Trump made in order to overturn that decision was necessarily a friendly one. I don't think Trump called and went, I don't like the call. I think he called and maybe it was a lot worse. So, yeah, everybody's so sad about that. Everybody's so mad about that. It's like, okay, bro, you know, Trump threatened to wipe out Iran. Trump threatened to send him back to the Stone Age. Trump actually played around with sending missiles to Moscow at one point with Zelensky. No one remembers that. A few years ago, Trump was like, do you think the missiles could hit Moscow? Like, Trump has actually brought us a little bit closer to a nuclear conflict with Russia in how provocative he was against Putin at many times in the last 3 or 4 years. Without this war, you know, we wouldn't have been able to attack him like this, but he's done nothing but make himself defenseless. So, you know, a little insider pulling with the World Cup. Who cares, bro? But it happens every 4 years. That's why you sports niggas are finished. You sports niggas are so sad about this. But the soccer ball, you're fucking poor, nigga. This is the problem. I have to stop dropping the N-bomb. Mama, I'm sorry. But this is the problem with a lot of Americans, seriously, and it disgusts me. It's so annoying. And I get it. The World Cup is fun. You watch the World Cup. I was dancing with the Moroccans the other day on Steinway. Like, it's fun. Like, you have fun. You enjoy it. You dabble in that. But I see the same people crying about Trump overturning this red card, and they, like, don't even know where Iran is on a map. It's like, you're stupid. This is where your mind is occupied. This is where your anger is. And, like, what are you talking about? This is where your concern is directed at. So, to me, I just play with it. It's like, oh, you're mad now? Oh, you're mad now? Trump nukes Iran. Trump nukes Moscow. Trump doesn't deport anybody. Trump brings in 7 million H-1B immigrants that are taking our jobs in every single city. You can see them. And you niggas are crying about a red card. Okay, like, now I'm happy about the red card. So, yeah, you can see where I am with that. People just drink the Kool-Aid on this shit. It's like, you're stupid. Who cares? Honestly, who cares about sports? Oh, sports corruption, bro. It's all rigged anyways. It's all rigged because Ronaldo lost and Ronaldo's the GOAT, so we know it's rigged. Now, that had me sad, actually. That was unfortunate. But yeah, I saw that and I'm like, bro, people are actually mad about this? But I'll tell you what, that's probably going to come up in midterms against him as well. And the Democrats smell blood. And they're earning a lot of favorability. So, yeah, that's not going to be good for him in some time. But it's whatever. Anyways, let's get into this. So, you know, this rabbi who's going super viral, Rabbi Mizrachi or Mizrahi, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. He went on Matan Evans' podcast, the younger guy who, like, has the hair. I don't really watch it too much, but him and, I guess, Gavin McInnes were going at it, and there's some funny clips out of this. I didn't get to watch these. I swear to God, this is going to be a raw reaction. I saved it for the stream. So we'll look at some of this, and then we'll get into Ukraine, Russia. We'll talk about the situation in Iran. However, the situation in Iran really has not changed that much, to be quite honest with you guys. So we'll see what that's looking like. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think in the chat? Do you think everybody was overreacting, or do you think Trump's wrong for that? Let's see. Somebody said drinking monkey aid. Yeah, but it's like, where's the, where's the American pride? Here's the thing, bro. People get mad at Trump. This is what I've noticed. People get mad at Trump, totally justified, and then they become, like, anti-American as a result. It's like, bro, pull back, relax. Like, it's okay to like the country a little bit. It's okay to be in favor of a little U.S. power grab, a little pulling strings. What do you think? Like, the world doesn't work that way? People think idealistically, like, everything is moral and perfect and no corruption needs to exist in order for a country to be powerful. And I am afraid to inform you that is never the way it has ever worked in society, ever. Never. So, everybody enjoys the fruits of America. Everybody loves this country so much. People are appreciative to live in a first world nation where they have access to literally everything that they need. The most opportunity, the most money you can make in the world anywhere is here, without a doubt. And there's not even a second close place. And then, you know, we do some American shit and now everybody's crying. It's like, all right, bro. I thought that was based, okay? I thought it was based. Sorry, that's just my opinion. But it's a boss move. Exactly, Forza. It's a boss move. You know? Someone said rules are rules. Yeah, but when you got all the cards, when you got big nukes, the rules are your rules, you know? So, look, man, power is real. We can't act like power isn't real. We can't act like hierarchy doesn't exist. We can't act like the bigger man is not going to take advantage at times where it benefits him just because he's the bigger man and he's going to be wholesome and moral. This is the way the world works, okay? We can learn. There's a lesson in this. There's a lesson in all of this. It's these same niggas enjoying subsidized product or subsidized services by the government, and then they see the red card being overturned and they go, what the fuck? You're stupid. So, like, also, don't you want the U.S. to win? Like, what's wrong with you? But anyways, so I didn't think I'd take that long on that, but just a silly little topic. Little slop before the news. Little slop before the news. Let's see. Chris Zaluga, Ryad, please never turn out like Sneako, praying for you. No. We love Sneako. Look, the clip doesn't look good. All right. I know. The clip doesn't look good. It is what it is. We spoke about it. We spoke about it on stream, and it's getting a lot of negative attention. Honestly, too much at this point, but whatever. It'll blow over. So people are miscontextualizing it as well. It's not like he was calling for violence, but it was provocative. It was certainly a provocative clip, but it's done now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let's see. So we can watch the whole video, but it's like, who wants to do that? But this right here says, Rabbi Mizrachi and black Israelites say the U.S. lost the war in Iran. Trump became Iran's bitch. No way. Let's see.
Netanyahu's not happy.
How long do you think that's going to last?
It's forever. It's done.
You think so?
Yep. And I said it was a military operation, and it was.
Do you...
Iran won.
Hold on.
I agree with you.
They're all dead.
I agree with you. Gavin doesn't agree.
The Ayatollahs are dead. The Navy's at the bottom of the
But
ocean.
they won.
And we punched the main guy in the prison
In
yard.
the end, you
He's
did
not
not
the king.
achieve
He's not
the
the
goal
shot
of the
caller
wars.
anymore.
Listen,
You
man,
did not
Iran
achieve the
got
goal.
Everything that they wanted.
Exactly.
That's why Netanyahu's
It's
mad.
it's pay to
agree
play.
with
They
you.
can't.
He is so cocky and arrogant. You just when Rabbi Mizrahi talks, it's like everybody in the room doesn't exist. Shut up. He's so arrogant. I watched his debate with Sneako, and you know, Sneako would bring up a good point, and he's just like, you don't know anything. You don't know anything. What are you talking about, Palestine? Palestine didn't exist on a map. You don't know what you're talking about. And it's like every time he talks, it's as if he perceives no one's in the room with him. It's just like I could funnel the joke further, but we're on YouTube. But it's just so funny. Like I get it. Like, yeah, he's a Zionist. Like, he's evil most likely, but it's also like he is kind of funny sometimes.
We
100%.
called their bluff, and they're not the tough guy anymore.
No,
Yes, we
no.
did. We
still in
killed all their
power.
They
Ayatollahs.
still
We
control
destroyed their
the-
They're
military.
Nazis
Not if
are
we don't
still-
want them to. We
Exactly.
smuggle out
Trump made
boats.
a point-
Come here, boat.
Listen, Trump made a point to say Obama gave 1.7 billion to Iran, and then Trump gave 300 billion to Iran.
Exactly.
Facts. Brutal. Try to tell you, the JCPOA was not that bad. Remember, the entire GOP and the administration was raving about that, by the way. They could not stop attacking Obama about that. Before the war had started, Trump was, when we were exercising brinksmanship and we had tons of military presence inside the Persian Gulf before we actually invaded or started our aerial assault, I should say, Trump was saying, Obama was so bad, he gave the Iranians billions of dollars, and now we just gave them $300 billion, control of the Strait of Hormuz, released oil sanctions, and probably a couple more billion that we have not actually publicly disclosed, and a 60-day buffer for them to figure out what they want to tell us at the negotiating table. And we're begging to talk to them, and they won't talk to us. And as much as I'm reluctant to say it, Obama's vindicated. And Obama sat down with some journalist, I forget who, a few months ago in the midst of the war, and he said, well, I had this figured out. There was a plan. man, the Iranians, I gave them their money. I gotta find that. I gotta find that interview. But you know, Obama had it figured out. Obama had the conflict with Iran figured out with the JCPOA. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action necessitated that Iran bring their enriched uranium back down to 3.67%, which only has any sort of civilian purpose at that point, like powering a power plant, nothing malicious, nothing military related. And Obama also, as a result of them dropping their enriched uranium down to 3%, released sanctions on them. But the problem was Israel was mad. And Israel was mad because, one, of course, the United States is doing diplomacy with their number one adversary that they wanted a regime change for several years. But also Israel was mad because those sanctions being lifted upon Iran was going to enable them to fund their proxies far more than they ever were able to in the past. Obviously, Iran would make tons of money from them lifting sanctions, and as a result, they would fund Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, they would fund Ansarullah in Yemen, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the other popular mobilization forces in eastern Iraq. So, you know, it was a far better deal. It was a far better deal, and as time goes on, the ever-changing deal, because the MOU is just always changing, the ever-changing deal with Iran keeps getting worse, and we keep having to capitulate and or concede because they hold the cards. They have the straight. They control a fifth of the world's oil, which is hurting our economy. We are pulling into strategic reserves like we never have before. Inflation is through the roof, and we might actually face a recession as a result of this. As long as it keeps going and we can't get a peace deal, we might see some sort of small recession in the next year. That's what the economists are now starting to say. And this is all thanks to Trump tarnishing the JCPOA in 2018, greenlighting the IRGC. Him and Mike Pompeo did it together, and then killing Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Israel killing what was his name? Why am I blanking? Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, in 2024 in November, and then they had the ceasefire. So, you know, systematically, they've weakened all of the links. They've weakened all of the chains of command. It was a domino effect in so that they can invade Iran. And Iran saw it coming. That's why they defended themselves brilliantly in this war, because the United States telepathed every single move that led to an obvious invasion at some point or another. And then you had Operation Rising Lion with Israel hitting Iran, and that prompted them to build up their missile stockpile like never before. That made Israel fearful of Iran and motivated the United States to strike like they never were actually going to before. The last few presidents refused to do it, and Netanyahu likely begged them. John Kiriakou says it, and I don't know how true it is, but I mean, it makes sense. It's common sense. Netanyahu likely begged Bush and Clinton and Obama and Biden to bomb Iran, and they probably all said, that's just way too far. I'm drawing a line there. We'll put sanctions on them. We'll do a little this and that, but we're not going to bomb Iran. So Trump was the final dumbass to actually make that happen. So you think about it, it's worth mentioning, you know, I don't want to yap, but it's worth mentioning that JCPOA was a remarkable deal. And by the way, at that time, Iran had trusted us. You know, now we've lost that trust. Even let's say theoretically, if the next president comes in and he wants to broker a deal with Iran, he wants diplomacy, he wants to operate in good faith, is Iran actually going to trust that said president? Likely not, because now the United States has dug its own grave and created for itself a very distasteful, backstabbing, treasonous history with the Iranian delegation. And on top of that, during all of these peace talks, now there's reports out of Washington that allegedly Israel was sabotaging to assassinate the Iranian delegation, specifically the parliament speaker and the foreign minister, Mohammad Ghalibaf and Abbas Araghchi. So you think about that as well. Can't even trust the United States, and the United States doesn't even have the power to reprimand Israel in sabotaging and killing the people they are trying to broker a peace deal with. How is the next president going to clean that up exactly? I would love to see how he works that. Gonna be tough. So people really underestimate how much of an issue Trump caused now with the Iranian war, and it's understated. And of course, U.S. media always avoids this topic. They don't go into the great detail. CNN does, but Fox doesn't. But I think none of them actually give it the justice it deserves. Trump has created an issue. He's created a vacuum in the Middle East that's going to take years to completely resolve. Even if we can exercise some diplomacy and broker a peace deal, Iran will not come out on the other end of that unless they are actually the winning side, because it doesn't cost them to stay in this Cold War with the United States where we're not fighting them, but we don't have peace. It doesn't cost them at all. Oh, but they've got sanctions, but they've dealt with sanctions. And we blocked their naval ports and they still weren't begging for a ceasefire. So exactly what can we do to get Iran to actually capitulate? It's one thing, it's destroy them militarily. But if we destroy them militarily, they will destroy the Gulf militarily. And that's where a lot of our assets belong, like our military infrastructure and our bases. So that's just not on the table at any point in the future. We tried to do that. We tried to destroy the country. And very quickly we found out how painful that would be if we kept it up for long enough. As well as the fact that our anti-missile interceptors were running low, munitions were running low. And these Middle Eastern countries, really the GCC ones, were starting to suffer from airspace protection. Maybe over-prioritization in Israel. And then you got the war in Ukraine and Russia. You got China wanting to invade Taiwan. But no, our hands are tied defending Israel. For what purpose exactly? So they can get their bigger country. That's really what it all boils down to. So, say what you want about Obama. Yeah, his foreign policy was trash. Absolutely trash in Syria. But at least he kind of fixed the biggest issue that we're going to have to face in the next 10 years, which is ultimately Iran. You know? So, but anyway,
Exactly.
Trump became Iran's bitch. That's what, listen, a lot of white people, white men, are disappointed in Donald Trump. First,
Yeah, I
that
don't
him
give a
letting,
shit.
but you supported him, though. You took
I
credit
still
for
do.
getting him in
Oh, you
office.
still
I
a Trump
still do.
supporter?
And
you
I
still a
want to
Trump
gloat
supporter?
because I said Iran will not be a quagmire, and it wasn't. And it should. People should be happy that Netanyahu is mad.
But it wasn't.
Netanyahu
it wasn't. Gavin, what are we saying?
wants to go to Lebanon and Egypt
Yeah.
and start a whole
Yeah.
Middle East disaster. Went
Netanyahu
in there,
Netanyahu,
flexed
as a
his-
leader
you
of
know
a
why-
country,
but you know
is
why
trying
Trump-
to avoid
but you know
missiles
why Trump-
on innocent civilians.
But
I
you
think
know
that's
why
the
Trump-
last-
What's wrong with that?
There's just no way, bro. Are we serious? Netanyahu is trying to avoid innocent missiles. Okay, Rabbi, why? Why are missiles raining down upon northern Israel from Hezbollah? Did you ever guess? Maybe it was because you invaded Iran with the world's strongest military power being the United States and killed their leader on the first day of the conflict. Did you think there wouldn't be retaliation for that? You punch somebody in the face, you get hit back, and you go, what the fuck? Why'd you hit me? So,
That's the last thing he's
Because
concerned with.
Iran
That's his
wasn't as
concern is
easy
doing
as they
missiles
thought.
on innocent people.
based.
No,
And
it's
that's
because
facts.
we broke Iran. They lost.
That's besides the point.
hundreds of millions
Netanyahu's
of
like the
dollars in
missile.
oil.
In a war, you're going
We
to
was
lose.
about
destroyed
to.
their
In a war, you're gonna
military.
Why is there Burger King in front of them? Can anybody explain this to me? Dude, we've got a Hebrew Israelite, we've got Gavin McInnes, we've got Matan, and then we've got a rabbi. Like, insane blunt rotation. Who thought of this collaboration? This video's got to have a shit ton of views. Let me see. How many views does this video have? Matan Evan it is. Okay, I was saying Evans. 295K. 295K in one day. This is hilarious, bro. This is hilarious. Maybe we might have to actually crank out the whole video because this is good content. But it's an hour and a half. God damn.
We have to
We
wait
just
now.
we
But you
killed,
restored-
we murdered
you
the
restored them,
Ayatollahs.
though. You restored Iran, though.
No, it's
You're giving them $300 billion.
It's
and
a-
now they can sell oil to any country now.
Not only
This Israelite is cooking, okay? He ain't cooking with his religion, but he's cooking with his politics. That I know.
on our terms. And the
You
second they
restored
don't,
they
them,
also have the
second they don't,
missiles.
they're out.
They have the uranium.
still could do the
450
uranium. They could do
kilograms
all
of
that shit.
uranium.
Facts. Facts. They got it all. They got it all. Did I lie? Hey, all of you niggas that were saying, I really need an apology because I extensively, meticulously covered the Iran war day one to day 1 million. And if you've been here since March or April, you know that. I farmed that war so bad, but every single day I told you guys the same thing. Iran is going to be victorious. This is impossible for the United States. If there's boots on ground, it will be a disaster. We cannot overtake Karg Island. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's confused. He's lying on Truth Social. The economy is suffering. And at the end of this, Iran is still going to have their missiles. They're still going to have their highly enriched uranium. And they're still going to have their proxies and their IRGC and their leadership. And the son, who was the leader of the exterminated father, who was far more extreme than that father, in which, by the way, historically, Middle Eastern officials across the entire Arabian Peninsula begged for him to never take power, but the United States did every single thing to enable him to actually achieve just that, which is power over the IRGC. Who's victorious? Who's victorious? And what have me and my brother been telling you since March, since February, actually, when I was just collabing on his channel? We told you, you just can't beat Persia. And by the way, I'm sure Tulsi Gabbard and anybody else inside of the IC pleaded with Trump not to start this war, but he took Israeli intelligence favor over U.S. intelligence. And on top of that, this is something they've asked every sitting U.S. president to do. But again, because every prior U.S. president probably listened to their own intelligence, they didn't do it. So somebody give the Hebrew Israelite some credit. He's cooking. He's cooking.
And they now gonna
Iran
charge.
beat the shit out of y'all too. You fake Jews. He beat y'all ass.
No way. Yo, he's going sick. He said, Iran beat the shit out of y'all too. He called him a fake Jew? Wow. I wouldn't take that, Rabbi. Fight back, Rabbi. Fight back.
Mad that Hamas still
That's why y'all
exists.
mad.
Sorry, he's
They
not
were
Jesus
playing with
Christ.
me Because you want Netanyahu to keep
I don't
bombing.
understand. If you're a Jew, you should be upset
No.
about it, not
I
happy.
don't like neither one of y'all. I don't like none
You
of
want
y'all.
the
I don't like
Holy Land?
Trump,
You
Iran,
want the
or them.
Holy Land to be bombed
gonna be
by
war
Muslims?
Holy Land
I
until
don't understand.
Christ
Wait,
returns.
let me get
Until the Messiah returns,
Let me get
it's
it.
gonna-
Let me get it clear.
That is probably true. Eschatologically, like if you want to do the theological perspective, yeah, there probably won't be total peace in the Middle East until Christ returns. Like that's just probably how it's going to pan out. Like that's just facts. I don't have groundbreaking evidence. I don't have gun smoking evidence for that, right? Like I'm not going to point to 5 different passages in the Old Testament or like whatever, but I'd probably be on board with that statement. The Middle East will probably never see peace until some end times, or the signs of the end times, rather.
Holy Land. It's written in the Torah that that's the land that God loves the most.
I
right?
agree.
All right.
But you also know Valley of
now a
Jehoshaphat.
bunch of terrorists, Muslim terrorists,
y'all.
shoot missiles and wants to occupy the Holy Land from
But y'all-
the Jewish nation, and you're happy about it.
Yes.
What
because
kind of
y'all
a Jew
are
you
the
are?
most murderers out of all of them.
A black one. They're all
Because
about
when
violence.
when the Palestinians.
Yo, Baton is hilarious. Baton is hilarious.
That's the whole
When
thing.
the
There's no
Palestinians-
such thing,
Let me
Palestinians.
just
I'm
finish.
sorry.
Before-
Do you know
before
history?
19
Do you know
Here he goes. There's no such thing as Palestinians. Do you know history? Here we go. Here we go.
history?
Yes.
He's about to run with the script, chat. But hold on. This is really good. A Jew versus a Hebrew Israelite? I'm here for it. Because we always see Christians and Muslims fighting, and it's like, okay. Is anybody... I'll get back to this. I just want to mention this. Is anybody tired of, like, Christian-Muslim debates? Oh, it makes me want to throw up. Like, and sometimes it's good, but it's just like, bro, it's honestly a litmus test. You know, when somebody's watching Speaker's Corner and like God Logic and Sam Shimon and all these other apologists, it's like, okay, I get it, it's content, but are you not tired of that? Like, bro, I'm Muslim. I'm just watching Islamic content. Like, I don't care. I don't care. It's so annoying, you know? Aisha was this. Rebecca was this. You guys are both retards. Who cares? Who cares? Ultimately, this is all futile. Either one of you are not going to change your minds, and no one on either one of your sides, both crowds are not going to change their minds. People in the middle are just going to be scared from both religions because you guys are like digging up dirt on either religion. It's just like, I don't know, maybe I'm alone on that. I can't with the religious debates, bro. They're so annoying. So annoying. And I get it. Like, I used to watch that stuff. I used to. Maybe that's why I'm tired of it. But it's like, you know, I can't. And I respect it because it does take a lot of due diligence and research and knowledge. And you got to be on your toes. You got to be quick. You got to be ready for all the arguments and the rebuttals. But I can't believe people eat that shit up. Like, those videos still do so well. It's very lucrative content. So I get it, but ugh. I just throw up in my mouth when I see that shit. You know? It's so boring. You know? But Muhammad was a warlord. Oh, but if Christ was God, why did he say, God, why have you forsaken me? And it's like, all right. Oh. Does anybody else feel that way? Both of you are, just shut the fuck up. It's so annoying, bro. I just can't. Like, okay, and is it 2015? I don't know. I'm not trying to act like I'm too smart for it, but I have heard like 99.9% of the arguments. It's just boring, dude. But whatever. Let's get back. But that's why I mentioned that. Hebrew Israelite and a Jew. Now I'm here. Now I'm here for. I'm with that. See, this is good because they're both so wrong. To me, they're both so wrong, and they're just fighting each other. So this is amazing. This is really good.
Yes,
you seem to know history.
There
There is no such thing Palestinian. It's a made-up name. There's no such thing.
Jewish is a made-up name too. It's Jews. It's Judah.
Jews come from Judah.
Jewish is made up.
Yehudi.
Tell me.
It says
Tell me.
Yahudi
It's written
is
in.
not Jewish.
What
That's
is it?
Hebrew.
Yeah.
It's
Yehudi
Jew.
means
You're
Yehudi
either
Jew.
Jew- you're
In
either Jew-
English, Jewish means
Listen,
Yehudi.
man, you're either Jew, Judah, Jews.
Jews.
Jewish is fake.
Listen.
But so when it comes to Palestine,
Tell
at
me,
the time,
who made up?
let me-
No,
you
but
actually-
first,
wait,
who
hold
made
on,
up
hold
the
on.
name Palestine?
Wait.
Who made it up? Tell me.
It doesn't matter.
No, it's very important.
It was the Romans, wasn't
In
it?
history.
In history, who invented that
Before they
name?
divided Palestine in half, they invited y'all with welcoming arms. You could see it on video as y'all coming off the fucking boats. And they invited y'all with welcome arms, and y'all thanked them by slaughtering them and going to war with them.
You
Ha 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 ha. He's cooking. He's cooking.
made up now something that it's completely.
You know what's crazy? Was the land of.
It makes it better because he's black. So like he's like, it makes it better because he's like, y'all niggas been killing Palestinians. It's like just better because of that. I get tired of like the intellectual like LARP, like the what the. I like that he's just like, but you niggas, yeah, that's a genocide, nigga. Like I love it. This is amazing.
Israel, was the state of Israel, was that the first location y'all was gonna go to?
No, listen.
The Argentina angle.
Answer the question.
I'm answering you. You ask 3 questions.
No,
Let me
but
answer
this
you.
one I want you to answer.
Let me answer
the
you.
The state of Israel, was
In
that
the
the
Quran,
first location
in the
y'all gonna
Quran,
go to? Why you
it's
can't
in
answer
the
that?
Quran.
Oh my God, bro goes straight to in the Quran.
It's written that the land
you
of
can't
Israel
answer that?
belongs to the Jewish people.
But just answer that.
Where does it say that?
There was no such thing Palestinian
Is that
nation.
The Quran says that the promise of God with the children of Israel is contingent upon their good behavior. And it's contingent upon them upholding the covenant, which they did not do according to Islamic theology, as stated per the Quran chapter 2, literally like almost every verse until verse 100. Go look it up.
First location y'all was gonna go to.
Until 1964, there was no such thing
you answer the-
Palestinians.
Okay,
there
we
were
got that out the
regular
way.
Arabs. Yasser
That's not true. Palestine was literally mentioned in 1917 in the Balfour Declaration.
Arafat, the head
the
of the
state
Palestinians,
of
was from
Israel.
Kuwait.
I want
Yasser
everybody to pay
Arafat.
attention. He's not answering this on purpose.
Yasser
'Cause
Arafat.
this is important.
You
I
finally
am
met
answering.
somebody
If
who
you
won't
have
let
patience,
anybody
2
speak as
minutes.
much as you.
If you
Oh, come on. I wanted to hear the rest. This is good, chat. What do you think? This is funny. Yeah, and they say like Israel in the Quran. Israel in the Quran refers to the Jewish people, not the state, the same way it's mentioned. Like that's the same manner that it's mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as well. It's not mentioning like the physical state that exists today. It's talking about the children of Israel, the children of Jacob. So I always think that's funny when they try and pull that one out. But yeah, the Quran, actually, in chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, the Quran actually really does condemn the Jewish people. Like, just read chapter 2 of the Quran. I'm not trying to, like, Islam pill you, but if you're curious, read chapter 2 of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah. The first, like, 50 verses is just, or 50, like, 70, actually. First 70 verses is condemning the Jewish people for all of their betrayals to God. So, we could pull it up, you know.
silly rules with don't turn on the oven and everything, and women wearing a wig on top of their real hair.
Yeah, we don't do that.
They don't think they're going to get hit with a lightning bolt if they don't do it. It's more of an homage to tradition, and they're following the customs. It's not like I put one over on God. I left my stove on low heat so I can use the stove this weekend. That's just being respectful of your ancestors.
Guys, we're the people of the book, and you clearly don't. Yes, we are.
For example, my family is Scottish from Glasgow. If you have an umbrella in Glasgow in the rain, you'll get the shit kicked out of you. So I never. Yeah, you gotta let it. Just water. They'll yell at you. Yeah. So I don't use an umbrella as an homage to my ancestors.
Gavin, can I answer your question?
So like quick lore here, just to debunk him, not to Islam pill you guys. So here it says, verse 47, O children of Israel, remember all the favors I granted you and how I honored you above others, which God certainly did. Guard yourselves against the day which no soul will be helped to another, no intercession will be accepted, no ransom taken, no help will be given, yada, yada, yada. And this goes on in chapter 2, but Islam, or I'm saying Islam, in the Quran, I believe in Surah Al-Ma'idah, I think it's chapter 4. Let's see. Some quick lore here. I'll show you the verse. God actually curses the children of Israel for calling Mary an adulterer. Where is it? وَبِقَوْلِهِمْ بِكُفْرِهِمْ. Find it.
That's a question.
Your comment.
I was covering your ass.
I know. Can I answer your comment?
They don't like it when you help
You have to
them.
understand. In life, you have to learn.
They start saying the misconceptions are true.
Yeah, you have to understand, Gavin, one thing. You assuming things. You never read the Torah once in your life and understand the literal meaning of the Torah, and you're already jumping to conclusion. We have rabbis that sit from age 3 until age 100, learning 18 hours a day, the Torah, the oral Torah, all the Jewish traditions.
That's a healthy, that Torah makes you healthy. You live to 100?
This is people that learn 1,000 times more than an average doctor or a lawyer or a judge, and they're familiar with the entire religion from all directions.
All right, I was trying to throw you a bone.
And you come and criticize them in a minute without reading one page of the Torah.
Oh, it's chapter 4, Surah Nisa, 156. Yeah, so it says here.
I hang out with Hasids my whole life.
Without knowing anything, and you guys already assuming and
I
pretending
talk to the woman with the wigs on, and they tell me it's about tradition. Yeah.
I wouldn't come and argue with a computer genius because I know I'm not a computer genius.
Sorry, I wasn't listening to the argument, so I'm going to have to play it back. But I just wanted to pull this up for you so I can completely negate what he said with just this one verse. It says right here, and we curse them. I got to get the full context. Hang on. One sec. Okay, can we get this full screen? I see some chats just came in, by the way. Don't worry. I will read them in a second. So it says, and they were condemned, but really they were cursed, for breaking their covenant, rejecting Allah's signs, killing the prophets unjustly, and for saying our hearts are unreceptive. It is Allah who has sealed their hearts for their disbelief, so they did not believe except for a few, and for their denial and outrageous accusation against Mary, and for boasting we killed the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary. And then obviously in Islam, they don't believe that the crucifixion actually happened, but that Jesus was raised up by God. But right there, it shows them completely, or it shows the Quran completely condemning the children of Israel, and it does that in several different places. So when Rabbi Mizrachi says, oh, you know, the Quran, it doesn't promise anything. It does not promise anything.
Yes, I won't make myself look like a fool. So if I'm going to speak with someone about computers, and I know he's a top...
You're on your own from now on.
What are they debating about? Okay, Gavin McInnes attempts to defend them. All right, let me read these chats. We have one more clip. This is good stuff. Let's see. Oh, Ryan, thank you so much for the one gifted. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you, bro. Let's see. Oh, John says Exodus 15:14 mentions Palestine as a race and a land. Yeah, dude, he's just a liar. He's a liar. This is what like he's been doing with Sneako. That they just lie. So let's see. So this clip here, Rabbi Mizrachi and the Black Israelite fight over who's the real Jew. We're the real Jews. We're the real ones. We have a tradition of 3,300 years. You just came this generation and claim you were the real Jews.
You mimic us.
You mean the Beastie Boys?
No, we're the real Jews. We're the real ones, bro.
How is that possible?
We're the real ones.
How is that possible?
Because it's possible.
How?
We keep the Torah. You keep the Torah.
Keeping the Torah doesn't make
Where's your
you...
sit? Where's your
Keeping the
sit,
Torah doesn't
Where's your
make
sit?
you...
We have a tradition of 3,300
But
years.
keeping the
You
Torah
just came
doesn't
in this
make you one.
generation and you claim you are the real
That's a
Jews,
lie.
the real Hebrews.
So
What
when
kind
Solomon
of tradition
said
you
he's
have?
Wait, why has no one thought of this debate sooner?
Right,
You have 3,300 years of...
Let me just ask you a question. When Solomon said he's black, what did that mean?
Who?
Solomon.
Where does he say he's
Song
black?
of Solomon 1:5. I am black
It's the
but
small
comely.
lizard, the salamander.
In Exodus, when Moses put his hand in his bosom and then he took it out and it was white, when he put it back in, it was like the rest of his body. What was the color of his body?
First
before?
of all, you have
I
black...
thought y'all knew Torah.
No, first
You
of
said
all,
he was tan?
First of all, first of all, there's black Jews from Ethiopia in Israel. It's
I'm not
plenty of
talking
them.
about Ethiopia. When you say that we're copying,
Ethiopians
but
are
when
black
when
Jews.
you say that we're copying, but then
What does
now
it matter
you're
what
admitting
color-
that
wait,
they're
what does it
black
matter what
Jews.
color Moses
The race.
How can you have black
What race
and white
has
Jews?
race doesn't have to do anything with religion. There are
Well, you
Jews.
just brought up
There are
race.
Jews from all nationalities and all races.
How? Break it down.
There are Jews. There are Yemenite Jews. They were very, very black when they came to Israel 100
How do
years
y'all
ago.
treat the Ethiopians?
Very nice.
That's
I have a lot of
Oh, very nice.
students
The
that are
Israelites
Ethiopian.
that came over there from Chicago in Dimona, how do y'all treat them?
Oh, I have plenty of. I actually gave them a lecture in Dimona.
No, how do
No, he's talking about
Israel
the
treat
black
them?
Israelites.
Treat them fantastic.
No, he's talking about the
They
black
love. I know.
I've been there.
They love Israel.
Yeah, I've been there.
They love
Yeah,
Israel.
I've visited
Nobody
Israel.
forced them to stay in Israel.
I just don't.
They love it.
I was in
I
Ashkelon.
know.
I went to where Sodom and Gomorrah
He was in
at.
Ashkelon and shit, yo.
Yeah, I was in. Shut up, man.
You're
I went to
Matan's such an asshole.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
He was in
at.
Ashkelon and shit, yo.
Yeah, I was in. Shut up, man.
You're
I went to the Dead Sea. I went over there.
What?
Telerad.
He
where
just
they
said
say
it.
King David is buried, which I think that's
He said I was in
diabolical. Only a
Ashkelon
white
and
man
shit.
would
We was kings and shit.
keep David as a tourist attraction, but
Buddy, you
been
think you
lying
caught
about it
me?
because I bet if we lifted up the coffin, David's not in the coffin. They just telling you that that's David. But yeah, I visited Israel.
So these are not real Jews.
No, they're impossible.
Oh, yeah?
Do you light fire on the Sabbath?
The only motherfucking
You
pig
got
I eat is
the-
police.
When you say light fire on the Sabbath, can we turn the heat on the Sabbath?
Well, we're not
So,
turning
or
the
do we
heat on
gotta
the
freeze?
Sabbath.
Do
Before
we freeze
Shabbat.
on
No,
the
before
Sabbath?
Shabbat.
No electricity.
We put it with
So
the
why you ask
with the
me such a
timer.
stupid-
We don't
why-
touch
why
it
you
on the
ask me
Sabbath.
such a stupid
Do
question?
you light the fire on the Sabbath? I ask you.
If it's cold and that fire goes out, the fire
But
get
it's
lit
written,
on the Sabbath.
it's written in the book of God, which you're not denying.
Exodus
It's the book
34
of God.
chapter.
You should not create any
You should
fire
not
on
kindle
a Sabbath.
fire. Who now?
So-
you know what it means?
And
to
you know
kindle a
what's the
fire?
punishment for that?
Wait, hold up, wait.
For
let's
for
walk
lighting
it.
fire
will
on
be
the
returned
Sabbath?
as an apple.
Do you know what it means
Yeah.
to kindle a fire? Break that
Light
down.
a
Kindle a
fire.
fire. No, don't say light.
לא
It says
תבערו
kids when
אש
you
בכל
read about a fire in a
מושבותיכם.
digital
If I take
book.
a match, if
Say
I
again?
take a lighter
When you read about a
and
fire in a
flick that
digital
lighter,
book.
I didn't kindle a fire.
You don't.
But
Bro, this is so funny. They're arguing about the law of the Tanakh and the Torah, and it's like, bro, both of you niggas are wrong. God is ignoring both of you.
to kindle a fire, the work
I
that
have
it
the
took
best,
to kindle a
okay,
fire
I'll
is
prove
different.
where the
You want to
I-
teach
I-
us how to speak
I would
Hebrew?
absolutely teach you.
Teach us
well,
how
no,
to
no, no,
speak
no. I'm
Hebrew?
not a Hebrew expert. I
All
wouldn't
right, so
profess
here
to be
you
a
go.
Hebrew
Oh,
So
you
it
know how to
says,
read Hebrew?
so it
I
says,
can read it.
so it
No, no,
says,
no.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
I can
says,
read
not,
it.
it
Oh, yeah,
says,
sure.
not-
Speaking.
listen, I will tell it to you.
All right, that's enough of that. Anyways, we'll get into the war. Let's go over what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now because the situation is heating up real time. We can look at some videos of the major Russian attack about 4 days ago on Kyiv, in which Russia launched out an all-out offensive, some of the worst that Kyiv has seen in a really long time, to be honest. So this article here reads, Ukraine's capital city, Kyiv, came under attack by Russian ballistic missiles early Monday morning. So let me go ahead and get this on for you guys right here. Get this full screen. So explosions have been heard across the city center in the early hours as the combined attack, also involving drones and cruise missiles, continues. At least 3 people were wounded, and at least 2 districts in the city reported fires or damage from debris. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, said in a statement on Telegram, people remain trapped in a multi-story residential building that was badly damaged in Podolsky district. Klitschko said, shortly before the explosions, air raid sirens were activated throughout the city. The attack came after Ukrainian President Zelensky warned Sunday that the intelligence indicated Russia was preparing a new massive strike. Last Thursday, Russia launched a ferocious attack on Kyiv that killed at least 30 people in what was the third deadliest assault on the Ukrainian capital since the start of the war. Russia's war in Ukraine will form the backdrop to the upcoming NATO summit, which starts on Tuesday in Ankara. Russian forces have stepped up efforts to make more of Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region a key objective for the Kremlin, and Ukraine cities face nightly attacks from Moscow's drones and missiles. Ukraine has also stepped up missile and drone attacks against key infrastructure deep in Russian territory in recent weeks, including oil refineries, ports, and military factories. On Sunday, Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with Trump on a July 4th call lasting nearly 90 minutes, in which the U.S. leader again offered to help end the Ukraine war, according to Russia's foreign ministry. And this story was developing at the time it was written, although it may have been updated. So we can go ahead and watch this video and get some updates as to what's been happening. And then I could take you guys through a little bit more of the history from 2014 onwards and how we've gotten to where we are today.
A grim task.
This is what happened a few days ago. This was 4 days ago. And then I'll show you the Ukrainian response as well. But let's take a look at this very briefly. Desert Joe, thank you so much for the 5 gifted. Appreciate you, my friend. Huge support of the show. Shout out to Desert Joe. W's in the chat. Always appreciate you. And then MB says, Rabbi basically saying, you jacking our swag, find you a new wave. Yeah, dude, it was actually like the best debate I've ever seen. See, that I'll sit down and watch. That I can do. But the Christian Muslim one, dude, it's just rang out. Like, all of the juice is gone. It's just become so boring at this point.
Crews in Kyiv, just hours after a new salvo of Russian strikes hit the city. Officials are saying that at least 13 people were killed and that more than 85 others were injured. And the damage, it has been reported at more than 30 locations across Ukraine's capital city. Right now it's mid-morning there and rescue crews are out in full force. Officials say that a number of residential buildings took direct hits. Right now, emergency crews there, they're going through the rubble, trying to recover the remains of the victims. President Volodymyr Zelensky, he had warned that there were indications that Russia was preparing for a massive strike. And it comes after a series of Ukrainian drone attacks deep inside Russia in recent weeks. Ivan Watson is following developments from Hong Kong and joins me live. Ivan, so what do we know about what led up to this? Our understanding was that Ukraine's president had intelligence that this was likely coming?
That's right. And Volodymyr Zelensky had, in fact, warned residents of Kyiv to heed the air raid sirens and to treat this seriously. So you actually had large numbers of residents who had taken to the subway stations that have served as air raid shelters for much of the last more than 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, that they had taken those precautions. And yet, despite that, the ferocity of this bombardment has claimed lives. The emergency workers, as we speak, are still digging through the rubble of buildings.
And just for some context, guys, this is in response to extreme Ukrainian aggression against Russian oil infrastructure that was happening for the latter part of June, especially from the 27th onwards to the 30th. Ukraine was hitting Russia very, very hard with some missiles and drones that destroyed critical and key sites for oil and gas and really just energy infrastructure overall, which is huge because Russia supplies the most gas to Europe, and they're the biggest producer of natural gas in the world, and they are the petrostate of Europe.
Trying to search for victims. According to the mayor of Kyiv, that's Vitaly Klitschko, he says at least 13 people have been killed, more than 80 people wounded. Among those missing is a 15-year-old girl and her family. The Russian defense...
Ryan, thank you for the gifted.
Defense Ministry has claimed responsibility for this attack. They say that this was a, quote, massive strike using high-precision, long-range weapons, including drones, that not only targeted Kyiv, but also other regions of Ukraine, including Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, Cherkasy, and Chernihiv, and that in Kyiv, that they were targeting things like factories that they claim were manufacturing parts for things like the Ukrainian Flamingo missiles, or storage facilities for drones, or industrial areas that were used to create parts for things like drones and missiles. The Ukrainian...
And in this offensive, Russia launched around 496 drones, allegedly. So... you know, and I know they're saying that in like 70 or 80 missiles. That's huge.
Government is saying
crazy.
there were residential buildings that were suffered direct impacts and have contributed to the growing loss of life.
And for some reason, it took the United States a long time to start reporting on this. There was no mainstream coverage until like a couple days after, which was really weird. Like I didn't see a lot of headlines on it. There was a delay.
As a result of this deadly night, at least 11 hours the bombardment continued. That's according to eyewitnesses. So a deadly night in what has been an escalating long-range aerial war between Ukraine and Russia that has escalated in just recent weeks, really, Polo.
So what's happening on the ground right now? Let's go live to Kyiv. We're joined by Peter Zalmayev. He's the director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Just bring us up to speed on the situation on the ground.
And so that was a few days ago, but now today, as a result of ongoing strikes against Russian oil infrastructure, it seems now that Russia's entering what seems to be, at least in certain provinces in the east and the west, a fuel crisis or an oil shortage. So let's take a look at what CNN has to say about it here.
Putin makes a statement with his barrage of deadly strikes.
Bear in mind, I know it's biased. It's CNN. They're pro-Ukraine. They're anti-Russian. But this seems to be the legitimate issue on the ground in Russia, at least for certain provinces, not all of it.
Strikes on Kyiv. The Russian leader is now facing trouble at home, as we hear from CNN's Claire Sebastian.
Two women screaming at each other over a spot in line at a mosque.
Yeah, someone said in the chat, Russia only mainstream aggression for media on Russian aggression. Yeah, no, that's very true. There's always going to be a delay when Ukraine is getting hit really hard, or unless they can make Russia look bad. But when Ukraine seems to be having the upper hand, the news is like that. Like, it's like that. So I was like struggling to gather everything together because there were just so many gaps, and I had to go to like alternate news in Europe.
Gas station. Scenes like these are becoming more common as intensifying Ukrainian drone attacks have caused fuel shortages and panic buying. Well, CNN's analysis has found that at least 50 of Russia's regions, well over half, are now officially reporting supply problems. Unofficial reports coming from almost everywhere else. Lines outside gas stations forming from Moscow to Siberia. And here in the southern Krasnodar region, a video emerged showing two women berating a man for filling up a gas canister. Authorities have banned this in multiple regions to prevent.
So guys, they can't even ration gas. They can't even bring gas canisters and have some extra for the home.
Stockpiling. Well, other Russians are coping with humor, turning hours-long waits into makeshift tailgate parties, joking that the best place for a date night is waiting for a fuel tanker to arrive, and that Russia's most expensive perfume is now gasoline. Well, this is getting so much attention that even Putin had to address this, warning that Ukraine's attacks are not just about causing physical damage, but about what he called an information operation.
In order to, at minimum, create uncertainty for us, or even better, to lead to a schism in Russian society.
All this could add to Russia's economic pain. Higher fuel prices mean higher inflation. But there is no evidence yet that it's going to convince Putin to stop the war.
Let's focus in on Ukraine's mission, Ukraine's refinery-focused drone campaign. What does Ukraine achieve with this battlefield strategy?
Ukraine has surprisingly achieved quite a lot if we consider that Russia is the largest producer and exporter of oil. It has an enormous system of refining and transit from land and sea routes. So as a result of these sophisticated drone attacks, Ukraine has taken about 20% of oil refining capacity of Russia. And it's because the equipment to run these stations is expensive. It's not easy to repair, but also it comes from the West, where there are sanctions imposed to limit Russia's access to any equipment related to energy sector. So this consistent attack led to shortages in many Russian regions of fuel. We already see rationing of how much civilians can purchase. They can't have canisters to fill in to store home, but also This will impact the army, first of all, and this is the goal. The gasoline that is used for armored vehicles and all kinds of vehicles, the production of it dropped 25%. So much this is the problem that for the first time, Russia will have to import some of it from sea. So it's in talk with Kazakhstan and India to actually repurchase in India's processed Russian oil that it's refining back into Russia.
And so I guess I'll speak on this very quickly. You know, this is the main concern that I'm starting to see is Ukraine is getting bold. Ukraine is getting very bold. Zelensky's getting very bold. He's got munitions and he's not hesitating to use them. And he is being quite provocative, not only targeting Moscow and Russia and military infrastructure, but now he's targeting economic infrastructure to upset the populace base over in Russia and have them ration on fuel and other goods that's going to keep the country running. So now it's turned into a situation where he's trying to pit the Russian people against their leader. How effective that is, it seems to be unclear because Western media is never going to be entirely honest, front-facingly at least, as to what the Russian people are entirely saying. However, the loose rhetoric and what I've heard through the grapevine and really what I've seen through the grapevine, I haven't heard anything, I'm not intelligence, but what I've seen through the grapevine is that the Russian people are increasingly becoming more frustrated. And look, that is the nature of a conflict that has lasted 4 or almost 5 years at this point. The people are starting to grow frustrated with the fact that the economy is suffering as a result of this war, not as much as the West may paint it out to be, but Russia doesn't have the best economy in the world. I think their economy is just a little bit more developed and or strong than like Spain, for example. And so what Russia depends on heavily is their natural gas and all of their pipelines, in which the United States has done everything to undermine and even bomb at certain points in the past. And the situation in Russia is a difficult one to understand. A lot of people try to paint it as something that's clear, that Russia was just aggressive against Ukraine for no reason. And I suppose one could make that argument, but it really would fall flat on its face when you consider the fact that NATO was expanding eastwards. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, has existed in much of Western Europe, and this really stems from the Cold War and the issue with the Soviet Union. A lot of Eastern Europe was the Soviet Union, and so Russia lost nearly half of its population after the Soviet Union had fell in '91. As a result of this, of course, concerns grew in the Kremlin, concerns grew with the Soviet Union, or now known as Russia, that the West would infiltrate more of Eastern Europe and project its power onto Russian borders. And as you go more east, the borders get wider and Europe gets wider. And so the biggest concern for Russia is not only defending or really keeping away Western influence in NATO as a whole and the EU, but keeping it to a narrow border so they don't have to defend against a really widespread cross of land over across those mountains in Europe. And the biggest thing that Putin has voiced for the last 15, 20 years is that Ukraine is a buffer zone that is non-negotiable. NATO, or really the United States, could never get their hands on Ukraine. And there was a leader in Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who was a Russian-favored leader. He was Russian-backed, and so he was aligned with the Russian government. There was never really a concern from Kremlin in anything in regards to Crimea or Ukraine as a whole, because he always had their best interests in mind. Well, there were Euromaidan protests in late 2013 and 2014, and around February, that leader that was backed by Russia or aligned with Russia was overthrown. And we've seen this story many times before. This is kind of the strategy of U.S. regime change, is to remove an unfavorable leader by launching a revolt, a coup d'etat, CIA entanglement. However, they've done it in South America and the Middle East is the same way that they've done it in Eastern Europe with Ukraine. And in doing that, the Ukrainian parliament installed this interim government that was far more in line with the West and NATO and the EU than it ever was with Russia. And Viktor Yanukovych was critical for Russia maintaining its power and creating a buffer zone within Crimea and Ukraine, because he denied any involvement or always negated involvement with the EU and never really accepted their power structure coming into Ukraine or any of their influence. And of course, that changed in 2014 when that regime was overthrown. And so now, as a result of that, you saw Russia right away after that overthrown leader of Viktor Yanukovych had invaded and formally annexed Crimea, and they already had some stations there, and so it wasn't hard for them to mobilize and take over the Crimean Peninsula, but they took over Crimea to kind of defend from that NATO expansion eastward, which had already taken over many of the Baltic states. You know, you had Albania joining in the mid-2000s. I think one of the northern European countries that borders Russia, one of them is either Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, I can't remember right now, but the NATO influence was creeping eastward. And so for Russia, they had that fear that, again, the Soviet Union had fell in 1991 and a lot of their influence had diminished as a result, and the same thing was going to happen again. Another angle that a lot of people don't talk about is the oil or the energy angle. Obviously, the Black Sea, now as we know, is home to tons of natural gas reserves that Ukraine was looking to mobilize and or create energy development for themselves. And that would have been a big threat to Russia because of the fact that Russia produces 30 to 35% of the natural gas supply to Europe, a lot of it going to Germany, which is why Germany has one of the most stable economies, or really a product of that. Germany has a very stable economy and they work hand in hand with Russia, and that is one of Russia's biggest purchasers of their natural gas being Germany. So you have all of these things existing. If Ukraine were able to get their hands on natural gas, what could they do with Europe, especially with entanglement with the EU and NATO? And again, this is not apologetic for Russia. I'm just giving you the rundown and kind of the long and short of it as to why they invaded in 2014 and annexed Crimea. And so that's another reason. Exxon and Mobil had started investing and creating energy infrastructure in 2013 and 2014 to start extracting and seizing this oil and benefiting from it. And of course, again, Russia's watching, they're waiting, and they're pretty much on the edge of their seat in readiness to annex the Crimean Peninsula or Crimea as a whole. And so they do that, they formally annex it, and now they have most of, if not all, control of the Donbass, which is the eastern province of Ukraine. That's going to be Donetsk, and that's going to be Luhansk, and then other regions as well. And that's where a lot of the fighting has been going on since 2014 till today, and it's been back and forth. Russia has seized lots of control, and at one point it seemed like they were going to take over all of Ukraine, but it kind of halted, and that's what I was saying earlier. It seems like an unstoppable force has met an immovable object, and it's important to remember Ukraine would have never been able to stand 10 toes and fight with Russia if it weren't for U.S. support. Russia outsizes Ukraine in every single metric, literally, whether it's GDP, whether it's anything else with military infrastructure, military technology, manpower, or just soldiers and sheer drones on the ground or in the air. But it now has turned into a drone war rather than like a full boots on ground 2003 Iraq style of war. And that's just because of the way the world is moving and the way warfare is changing. But after 2014, of course, they go tit for tat, back and forth, and there's tensions within the Crimean Peninsula between Russia and Ukraine. But it all ultimately ended when the President Zelensky moved closer and closer and started flirting with the idea of incorporating Ukraine with NATO. And that's when Vladimir Putin said there will be a special military operation in Ukraine, aka a full-on military invasion, and he hit Kyiv hard, as well as other provinces in eastern and western Ukraine, and completely toppled a lot of infrastructure in that country, and the war has been ongoing ever since. Now, that's kind of like a very brief rundown, but the 2014 angle is very important for you to understand as to how this all started and how the United States, as a lot of people argue, kind of exacerbated this issue in Eastern Europe because of the fact that we wanted to flex our influence into very close to Russian territory. And if you don't know, Russia just borders a few countries. That's going to be Belarus, those northern countries that I named earlier, which I believe is Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. And then you've got Ukraine as well, and that's right next to Moldova, and then that's right next to the rest of Europe that's allied with NATO. So I can show you on a map very briefly why this is such a threat for Russia and why they ever invaded in the first place. Take a look here. I pulled up Ukraine, but that's fine. It's right here. So zoom all the way out. Okay, you see Moscow's over here. This is Russia. Very, very wide border, an area to defend if there were if there was ever any Western influence penetrating Ukraine. Okay, there's also very strategic and critical gas lines, I think, going through, if I'm not mistaken, Volgograd and all of these provinces leading up to Moscow, and a lot of them branch out into Eastern Europe and these other countries that they supply gas to. So you can see if NATO starts to expand its influence, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, aka the United States, if we're really being simple here, if they continue to expand their influence through Poland, through Slovakia, and what did I say earlier? Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania is the country that it doesn't border. My apologies. But you can see how much of a quagmire it'd be for Russia to actually defend against any sort of Western influence. And so it started to turn into an issue of an existential threat, which is why they ever invaded in 2022. Belarus is obviously a Russian buffer state. They were a part of what I believe is the CSTO, if I remember correctly. And so for them, there's no worry there. And I think Moscow has flirted with the idea of putting missile launch sites all across southern Belarus to continue escalating the matter in Ukraine and deter Western influence. And so, now the biggest thing that I have to mention about all of this and where I wanted to segue is the United States has its hands tied over here. We are all worried about Iran. We're all worried about southern Lebanon. And we still can't resolve that issue because Israel is in the middle of all of it, agitating the matter, making it difficult or nearly impossible for us to broker a peace deal with southern Lebanon, ease the tensions, pull out the IDF from the Belfort Castle in areas that it never had control of since 2000, or really the 80s, since the Israel-Lebanon war had started, which is what created Hezbollah, by the way. And so we have all of these issues in the Middle East that we have to deal with, and now Ukraine and Russia is heating up. And remember, Russia is a nuclear power. And so how much more escalation are we going to be allowed to see before Russia starts flirting with the idea of using nuclear deterrence, in which, by the way, this won't be the first time they've falsely kind of thrown around a threat that they would use a nuclear bomb in this conflict. At least they've kind of flirted with the idea, or we've seen some semblance of it from Putin. And, you know, all of the deals that we have to not use nuclear weapons have been regressed further and further, to the point where now, if this continues, all roads kind of lead to Rome. You know what I mean? So it is an unsettling situation. This is one of the issues that Donald Trump said he would have resolved in like a day, and he was never able to solve it. And that's because it's a deeply complex issue. But the way to fix this, in my opinion, is just to remove and promise that NATO will never enter any province in Eastern Europe close to Russia's border. It's just unnecessary. There's no real benefit for us. And another reason why it was beneficial for Russia to annex Crimea, which is this little strip of land, or this little patch of land right here, the Crimean Peninsula right off of Ukraine, is because it gives them so much more advantage with the Black Sea, which is a warm water port all year round, and it's very critical for their economy. They also host their Black Sea fleet here, and so there's many benefits to them actually maintaining their presence and flexing their power here. So it was a no-brainer in 2014. Once the Ukrainian regime that was backed by Russia was overthrown, the first thing they went for and grabbed in a matter of days, actually, was a very quick annexation, was Crimea, and now they control a lot of the Donbass, or eastern Ukraine, which is comprised of the bigger cities like Donetsk and then Luhansk. So that's kind of like a rundown of what's going on in Ukraine. That's like a very shortened version. There's so many different facts about it. There's so many things that I may miss or I'm forgetting. And also, Ukraine was going to become an energy threat because of the fact that in the eastern province, I can't remember the city, I think it was Donetsk, that had some natural gas reserves or shale gas, and then also Carpathia in the western province that also had natural gas reserves. And so not only was it the Black Sea that Ukraine was going to utilize to become a petro threat against Russia, but it was also going to be the inland gas reserves, which now Russia is aiming to annex as well, in which they've largely been successful for the last, or the better half of the last 4 years. However, now it's kind of stalemated. So the question to ask is exactly how is Putin going to respond? The West is calling his bluff. The West is saying that he wants to capitulate. He wants to broker a deal. But Donald Trump and Joe Biden have been begging Vladimir Putin to be hands-off with this issue in Ukraine. And Putin has not he's not issued any sort of apology. He has not listened. He's hell-bent on taking control of the country and ensuring there will be no NATO influence there. And, you know, you have to wonder at one point or another, it's just become not worth it. And the Ukrainian people have been suffering as a result. A lot of Russian people have died in the conflict as well. But it's heartbreaking. And, you know, I want to see a liberated and free Ukraine. I don't want to see the Ukrainian people go through this anymore. But the United States really has to make the right decisions in order for this conflict to end overall. It's the same story that it was in 2024, and it's the same story in 2026. We have to pull NATO out of Eastern Europe, or else we're going to see the matter get worse and worse. So it really is, somebody's spamming World Cup lore. Anyways, it really is a grim and depressing situation. But that's a little bit of a breakdown from 2014 and what happened then, and then what we're seeing now, which is just tit for tat. They're going back and forth. But again, Ukraine has become so much more aggressive, I've seen, since the beginning of really May and June. And a lot of people weren't paying attention to it because of the conflict in Iran. But you better pay attention to it. It seems like the Iranian conflict is dying, and this one is growing in its aggression. And it's a matter of time until Donald Trump is really going to have to put his foot down and demand a ceasefire like he always does. And then both sides agree for 3 days, and then it's back to hostilities. So it was a video on X. I didn't know if you guys could hear that. Sorry. I'm on X scrolling. But I had some chats, so let me read them. But yeah, that's the issue. I don't know if there's a part I'm omitting. I haven't really paid too much attention to the whole Ukraine-Russia situation for many years, or many months rather. Sorry. Let's see. How many times? Oh, sorry. Ryan Cornwallis. Oh, one gifted. Thank you so much. Okay. KB Moss. How many times is he going to say escalate? What escalated into an escalation upon or up the escalator? war of escalation. Okay, very funny. Thanks for the 5. Pusheisty, what's UAE's endgame with Sudan / Israel with Somalia? With Somalia, I'm not too sure. But UAE's endgame with Sudan, or you're saying Israel with Somalia. Look, Israel wants everything from the Nile to the Euphrates. I don't know if Somalia is really going to be a part of that. I don't know too much about that. But the UAE is looking to take control in Sudan and exploit them for their gold, which they already really have done with Al-Fashir. So that's just going to be an ongoing issue until there's some sort of Western intervention. That's just the facts. The UAE is not going to stop their aggression in Sudan until there's some sort of like Western condemnation and or intervention, which there just really hasn't been. MB says Slavic discrimination is a part of it. Europe wants to weaken Russia. NATO wasn't supposed to expand past Germany. They want to put military equipment on Russia's border. Ukraine, I'm not mad at Russia. Yeah, there's so many different reasons as to why Russia invaded. So many. There's so many micro details. There's so many granular details that I just can't remember when I'm explaining this. But yeah, there was a lot of different and small escalations in NATO's expansion eastward and all of the military presence that these countries now possess because of NATO's presence in those countries that enabled and motivated Russia to annex Crimea and ultimately invade Ukraine in 2022, because that was the red line that Putin had always established with the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to which they never listened to him. And they called his bluff, and then he brutally invaded in 2022. And to this day, despite the war being painful for Russia at this point, because they really haven't covered much ground as much as they would have liked to, they haven't gone far past the Donbass, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop, and that's because there's a greater issue at hand besides just beating Ukraine, and that's the facts that really no one understands about this conflict. But yes, very true. Good point, MB. Thank you for that. And thank you for the super chat as well. So let's continue on with this video, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys the lore, and we'll see what CNN has to say onwards about these strikes. And just give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to go take a whiz. Give me one moment, but I'll let this video play for you.
And we've seen such, vivid depictions of this rationing. We've seen lines and lines of Russian drivers waiting for petrol in Russian cities, along with the images of blown up Russian refineries. What has all this done to Russia's so-called energy superpower status?
Why? Clearly, it has damaged it to a large degree, and also something that Russian population could probably have not imagined. They have the flashbacks to the 90s when Soviet Union was collapsing and there was deficit of everything. So it's a strange, harbinger possibly of what awaits Russia, and people perfectly understand it. Putin will try to put up a brave show and will try to find alternative sources for this energy, but the question is whether he will have to pay hard currency for this, to which he's also running out because his war chest is drying up. We see Russia runs a huge budget deficit, more than it has expected. So all of this creates really a crunch time for Russia. And especially, let's recall that there will be so-called sham Duma elections, where one way or the other, Putin will have to show up the brave face, telling how this war is going in his favor, which obviously the Russian citizens perfectly understand it is not.
This is, as you put it, crunch time for Russia and for Putin, but is there a danger that Russia's fuel crisis actually could rally the public around the Kremlin instead of turning them against it?
There's always a risk of that, and the nation under any attack is rallying around the flag. There are two questions. One, how long they can sustain this rally, and let's, as I've said.
And by the way, chat, the people in Russia understand full and well exactly why Russia invaded Ukraine. They're not like blind to it. They know all the lore. That would never be the case for the US, right? So
the Ukrainian strikes on Russia, when Russian population started feeling it, is now lasting more than a year and a half. And furthermore, it's attacking Moscow, the heartland of Russia. And also, let's remember, in Russia, it's the economic elite, it's a security elite that also has a huge influence. And if they see...
Let's see, MB says, you got to play the Putin Munich speech. In 08, I can play it for you. And he said it before that. Lotus, and thank you, my MB, for the super chat. Appreciate you, man. Lotus says, yo, Ryad, love the duo between you and Sneako. Keep up the good work. Hope to see a lot more collaborations in the future. Yeah, you will. You definitely will. Let's see. Sorry, did I kill you guys with the video I played? I'm sorry, bro. It was a video on my ex, and like it was like a video of Germany. Sorry, my bad, guys. Oopsies. Whoops.
Things happening, especially in Crimea, somewhere where the fuel shortages are the worst, because it's a...
And please, everybody, if you have not already liked the video, please like the video. I don't know how many likes we have here. Let's see. All right, I'm a boomer. I can't see the likes. I got to open up the stream, but got about 500 of you guys in here. So if you could like the video, that helps me out a bunch. I really appreciate all the love. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me.
Peninsula, it relies heavily on everything provided from mainland. The fear is that if Ukraine manages to choke off Crimea, there may be a real panic in the elites whether Russia will be able to sustain this, war treasure as where it's started the war against Ukraine back in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. And if there is a risk of losing this prize, there will be more pressure either to consider a certain removal of Putin or a serious negotiation with Ukraine to avoid a humiliating defeat.
Rescue operations underway as we're speaking in Kyiv following Russia's deadly strikes on the Ukrainian capital again. Officials say at least 18 people have been killed in the region, and the attack comes on the eve of President Trump heading to Turkey for a huge meeting of NATO allies this week, taunting the NATO allies. Clearly, the White House says, though, Trump will meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky while he is there. CNN's Harry Enton is...
Yeah, guys, in Russia brutalized them. So prayers to Ukrainian civilians, man. Heartbreaking.
Joining us now. All right, we see this attack. We should look at what's happening inside of Russia. How much is Putin being looked upon by his own people?
Yes.
Outside of the war.
So let's see. They're probably going to say his approval is dropping, which would make sense, but they may dramatize it. Let's see.
Or watching what's going on with that, and who are dissatisfied with the way things are going, especially when it comes to their personal economies.
Yeah, look, leaders at the end of the day have to respond to the people in their country. And right now, Vladimir Putin is feeling the heat because it's always about the economy, right? And what you're seeing here is, take a look. Okay, Russians who say their economy is getting worse or getting better. You look back 2 years ago, look, the majority of Russians said their economy was getting better. That number has collapsed. Now we're just talking about 27%. Compare that to the percentage of Russians who say that their economy is getting worse. That was just a third 2 years ago. That is up significantly like a rock.
All right, bro is mad excited. Like, dude, you can say whatever you want about the Russian populace being upset with this war, in which there very well may be some truth to that. At least the dissatisfaction, I suppose, about this war is probably growing over these last 3 or 4 years. That makes total sense, completely plausible. I'm not denying that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Vladimir Putin is simply not going to stop until he knows that the United States will pull out of its NATO aggression. It's just that simple. He won't. And by the way, he's covered tons of ground. He's annexed a lot of what used to be Ukraine. So, which, I get it, used to be the Soviet Union, but what used to be Ukraine. So it just, any American who thinks that Putin is like shivering in his boots, ready to just capitulate and concede and do a deal, this is the same shit they say about Iran. You don't understand the United States is always lying and spewing out this rhetoric, and this is exactly what gets us into the problems that we're always finding ourselves in. It's always, oh, they want a deal. Oh, they're struggling. Oh, they're terrified. Oh, the people are super frustrated. There's no rally around the flag effect. And then we lie about it, and at the end of everything, it seems as if though in us lying, it was the cope, because we didn't want to show people that we were never winning the war, and the people of the country we were fighting were favorable against the actual enemy, and with the home government they stood. So it's like the same thing we do in Russia. We're saying, oh, the Russians are upset, and oh, they don't have any gas, and oh, the Russians understand these are the implications of war. Maybe they're upset. I'm sure everybody wants the war to end, but they also understand there's going to be some serious concessions that are necessary in order for this war to end. Otherwise, Putin can't stop it because he would have started it for nothing. So this is a very dangerous, disastrous line of rhetoric. Putin's scared. Putin's terrified. Putin's going to bomb the shit out of Ukraine if we keep this war up. Like, it's going to get worse and worse. They've got tons of more munitions where that came from. So, and they've got a nuke. Are we forgetting they got a nuke? We're talking about how Putin is struggling. Putin is scared. Putin's got a nuclear bomb. So we got to grow up. You know, we got to grow up and put a cap on this and stop saying that we're winning. We have to grow up and realize Crimea is now Russia's. We have to grow up and realize the Donbass is largely theirs now. We have to grow up and realize there is no NATO in Ukraine. That's not realistic. That's not actually ever going to happen. We have to be fair, because if we're not, we're putting the lives of innocent Ukrainians at risk. And for what exactly? For Western influence, for Western expansion. This is actually diminishing gains. This is actually not helping anybody. So, and you topple on the fact that Ukraine is super corrupt anyways, and all of the corruption that's been exposed throughout the years. This needs to end. But it's going to require some honesty from the United States. Not Putin is shivering in his boots. How many years have they been saying that for? So it's just like we've got to be realistic with ourselves. It's the same thing with the supreme leader. It's the same thing with Abbas Araghchi. It's the same thing with the IRGC in Iran. Iran's begging for a deal. Iran can't hang on. Iran is going to lose all of their money. They're going to lose $500 million a day by the naval blockade. Remember that on Truth Social? And then we released the naval blockade on Iran, and they still control the Strait of Hormuz. So this rhetoric really needs to stop with the United States. It needs to end. From the media, from the president, from Washington, from the Oval Office, wherever it's coming from, it needs to stop, and we need to start being a little bit more honest with ourselves. I get it. Propaganda is a part of the game, but now it's actually hurting us a lot more than it would have ever helped us. So
to 60% now, nearly doubling in just the past 2 years. This war, and of course, all of the sanctions that go with it, have had a tremendous impact on Russia's economy.
Somebody says in the chat, niggas pump faking Putin. Bro might crash out one day. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. It's like, hey, the provocation's not a good idea with Russia. Hey, actually, let's not provoke Russia. Because I actually have sympathy for Ukraine. I don't want to see them continuously get bombed. But like when we keep saying, Putin's, don't worry, 2 more days, Putin's going to beg for a deal. It's like, no, that's not real. That's, and they have a nuke. So, you know, people think nuclear warfare is far. It's like, yo, it's far until it's not, though. It's far until we're really going back and forth and things are getting worse and worse. Because now what terrifies me is, what is it going to take for Putin to actually give up? It's not going to be hitting their oil infrastructure and shorting the country of gas for a couple weeks. That's not going to do it. If you thought that was going to do it, you are severely mistaken. You are egregiously mistaken. That's not even nearly enough to get Putin to capitulate. It's going to take a lot more than that. You think a guy with nuclear warheads is going to go, oh, damn, my people are running out of gas. Let me just sign a peace treaty. What dumbass. He's been at war for 4 fucking years. Like he's going to give up because there's a little bit of shortage of oil. Like, let's get real. Let us get realistic. Let's come to earth. Enough propaganda. This war needs to end. Needs to end. It's the same thing with Iran. It's like, why are we lying to ourselves? And how much more until the United States and the American public picks up on the bullshit? They've already picked up with the bullshit on Iran. That's why Trump's approval rating is at a record low level. Once this war starts getting mainstream headlines, people are going to start to pick up on the bullshit too. You'll see.
And you can see it here. The people inside of Russia are not liking the way that the economy is going. And for the first time that we've really seen in recent memory, the pessimism is sky high.
Look, and I'm not saying that's entirely false. I'm not saying the Russian public is not happy or happy. I'm not denying or accepting. Look, the case is, what's likely is that they're upset. They're frustrated. If they're waiting for oil, if they're waiting for energy, energy's running low, groceries are getting a little bit more expensive, inflation's up a little bit from what I've been reading. Look, they're definitely not happy. But at the same time, the way they see it, this war is self-defense for themselves in Russia. That's probably how most of these Russians see it. And so, are they that upset? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But that means nothing in the face of Vladimir Putin. That's what we need to discuss with one another. Doesn't matter anyways. They could be protesting. They could be protesting outside of Moscow. They could be protesting outside of Kremlin. They could be so mad about everything. Doesn't matter. Putin's not going to stop this war until he gets what he wants, which is U.S. capitulation and a cease of NATO aggressions expanding eastwards. Or NATO expansion aggressively going towards the east, is what I meant to say. And until we get that, or until we concede on that, there's just not going to be a cessation of hostilities. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sorry to tell you. And that's what all the smart people say about this war. That's what all the guys who are very honest, all the libertarians, all the guys on the right, all the guys on the left who are honest about this conflict will tell you. It's just not going to end that way. It's not going to end. So the U.S. has got to get out of the fairy tale mode. We got to get out of the we're the biggest, strongest, baddest, everybody bows to ours. Everybody bends the knee for us. It's like, bro, we just lost a war against Iran. Iran just whooped our ass. And now they might have a nuke and they control a fifth of the world's oil. So exactly how are we going to beat Ukraine, or how are we going to beat Russia via Ukraine as a proxy? I'm sorry. Are we dreaming? Gotta end it. It needs to end.
This is a terrible number for any leader anywhere. That is an awful number. People clearly dissatisfied. I do want to ask you about what's happening inside of Ukraine, and knowing that President Trump is going to meet with NATO allies. He is on the way to Turkey to do that. How much sway does he have with the Ukrainian public?
Yeah, okay. So, it takes two to tango, or three in this case, the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. And you can see the domestic picture here in Russia is not particularly good. Of course, what Trump is hoping
Alley Gaming, thanks for the $1.
Is that, he can, put his finger on Volodymyr Zelensky and, pressure him. But there, the domestic picture is very different, because take a look here. Look at this number. Look at this number. Net approval of U.S. leadership among Ukrainians. Yeah, Sarah is whistling, because this has been a dramatic, a huge shift. When Joe Biden was president back in
So if this is saying that the approval for the U.S. president in Ukraine is down 70 points, they probably just want the war to end.
2024, U.S. leadership was...
I think that's what that means.
Is on the positive side of the ledger at plus 3 points. Look at how this number has absolutely fallen through the floor to now.
And so if a U.S. president comes in and supplies Ukraine with all the big bad weapons they may desire, what's that going to do for Ukraine? Just put a bigger target on its back and lead us closer to a nuclear conflict. Doesn't help.
Negative 72 points. That is a 75-point switcheroo in the wrong direction. So, look, Trump is going to try and pressure Zelensky to make a deal in the same way he'll try and pressure Putin to make a deal. But Zelensky be like, hey, I'm not going to feel any pressure from my folks if Trump is putting pressure on me, because my folks just don't trust U.S. leadership.
Right, and there's a reason for that. Some of the comments that Trump has made, some of the niceties with Russia, and yelling at the president while they're in war has been a real problem for the Ukrainian people. I do want to ask you about, this war has been going on now for more than 4 years. And a lot of people thought, even U.S. intelligence thought, that it was going to be Russia taking over within days. The Ukrainians have managed to fight and fight and fight.
From what I've heard from good analysts, bad with remembering names, it's probably Scott Horton you're thinking of. It's that the dissatisfaction with Putin from people is actually with Putin being too soft. I've heard they want Putin to go harder. Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. Look, I don't want to take one side or the other because I just don't have the facts. You know what I mean? Thank you, by the way, for the super chat. That's from Lost Ronin. I don't have the facts. But what I can guarantee you is they understand the greater good of why this is happening. And they're willing to sit through a couple weeks of rationing supplies if it means Russia maintaining its sovereignty and Russia maintaining buffer states across Eastern Europe to protect from NATO expansion eastwards. They're willing to do that. So, it is, it's all lies. It's all lies. But this is the news, so we got to consume it and debunk it as we go.
In a way no one thought was possible, including Russia. So how do Americans feel about the war itself?
Oh, is he in an X space? Myron's in the X space? Okay.
Hey, you have
let's jump into that, because I'm tired of this CNN bullshit. So let's jump into that. Because this is what it's been for years, guys. If you haven't been following this conflict, U.S. media is just always making it seem like Putin's capitulating, Putin shivering in his timbers, Putin shivering in his boots, shivering in his timbers. I think that's the wrong way to say it. Shivering in his boots, but that's just not true. And that's the dangerous rhetoric we use with Iran, and look where that got us. So we've got to be careful with that. Okay, so
And maybe they were even willing to sacrifice some level of morality for, for the person next to him to have some food on the table.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And that's why nationalism is so, it's critical for socialism. But these guys don't want to have that convo, because then you got to have the uncomfortable immigration talk. And the last thing Democrats want to do is alienate the aliens.
Well, yeah, well, it's a huge chunk of their voter base.
That's why they're fucking fighting so hard for, IDs for voting.
It's insane to me that hasn't passed yet. It's something that over 70% of the country supports, and our super strong Republican Party that, All
right, they're just chatting up about socialism. But yeah, so that's a lot of what's going on in Ukraine right now. We'll keep up with that closely. Don't worry. I know no one's covering it. I'll cover it because I think it's important. I think it matters. I think it is relevant. And the situation in Iran has lost a lot of its steam. And so hopefully the MOU does work. It does work out. Hopefully Israel kind of pulls back in Lebanon a little bit, although it's a far-fetched hope. And we'll pay attention to that Ukraine conflict as it continues to escalate, which hopefully it doesn't, but it's just kind of like set up to do that at this point. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, let's go in the Discord server and let's see if any of you sent me some good clips. I'm not going to lie, I'm picky with these clips, man. Some of you guys sent some trash clips, okay? I'm sorry. So, gotta be good, Let's see. Reactions. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, Taylor Swift stuff. Let's see, what do we have here? All right, guys, this stuff is not good. Guys, we got to send some better clips in here. Okay, police shooting. Can't watch that. Oh, shout out to Myron. Enjoy, Brokey. Thank you, bro. What's going on, man? We're talking about Ukraine. Yo, Myron, if you're in here, take a listen to this. Bro, can you believe the Russians hate Putin?
Confidence in Donald Trump to handle this war. Take a look here. U.S. trust on Trump on the Russia-Ukraine war. Look at this number. Overall, it's fallen from 45% back when Trump was on the campaign trail to just 32% now. And look among Republicans. It was 81% 2 years ago. It is now just 60% now. Trump comes in to any negotiations in a weakened state, given the domestic feelings in Russia and Ukraine and the domestic feelings here in the United States as well.
Yeah, so there's that. There's that. And like I've told you guys, you take that with a very fine grain of salt. Take it with a very fine grain of salt. But yeah, so we went over the Rabbi debate, which was good. We covered Ukraine, Russia, at least the most recent developments and a little bit of what happened in 2014. A lot of things that I didn't mention, but I gave you guys the greater detail, the greater point of it. So the details we can go into later. And then the Iranian funeral we also reacted to and took a look at. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Let's see here. Do I have some chats? Oh, let's see. One sec, guys. My YouTube thing is just being stupid. One moment. Bear with me here a moment. All right, whatever. I'm just going to move it over to this. Okay. Shout out to Myron for the 50. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, brother. Enjoy, Brokey. The Brokey will enjoy. I needed that. That's Uber Eats right there. Ali Gaming says, why did we go to war with Afghanistan for Israel? I mean, because of the Taliban and Osama bin Laden. So we wanted the Taliban to hand over Osama bin Laden, and they were in Afghanistan. That's a large reason. Or a large part of it, rather. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It was great doing a nice little quick show, but I do have to be up at 6:30 a.m., guys. So my apologies. I don't want to screw myself over for the next day. It's still the beginning of the week. But I will try and be live tomorrow. I don't know how likely it is, but I'll try and be live tomorrow. I'm actually going to try to be live most of this week. So as long as it's feasible for me and my brother's not doing after hours. We'll see how we can make it work. But I appreciate every single one of you who were here. Thank you for all the super chats that I received. Love all of you guys. Like I said, a little bit of a quicker stream. I think we went over for a little bit more than 2 hours, right? Yeah, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Maybe 2 hours because I had the loading screen up for like a half hour. But nice little 2 hour stream. It's usually quicker around here. We will do longer ones eventually, okay? We will do longer ones eventually, but for now, we get to the news, we get to the important stuff, and we get out of here. We will cover Iran a little bit more closely tomorrow or in the coming days of the week, but all of you guys get some rest. Always a fun time hopping on stream and being the substitute teacher. Really love all of you and the ongoing support. Red Pill Clipper, thank you so much for being a member for 3 months. W Ryad, he says. WU, Red Pill. Appreciate you. Shout out to Tia, Desert Joe, MD, Ryan. Thank you so much for being a member. MD, very loyal member as well, and all the other members inside of the community. Love all of you guys. Desert Joe, did I mention you? I think I did. Love all of you guys. Appreciate all the support that I've been receiving. You guys make the show go on, and we'll be back on hopefully tomorrow. We'll see what the schedule is looking like, but definitely this week at some point. Oh, they messed up my hair. But until next time, guys, love all of you. Have a great night, and God bless.